There is a lie we were told about love, a lie so subtle that most women believe it without question. They told us that when we love someone, we must fight for that person, chase them, constantly prove our worth. They told us that true love requires sacrifice, total surrender, and permanent emotional availability. For years, I too believed this lie until I realized something that completely changed my understanding of human relationships. I realized that the women who suffer the most in love are precisely those who fight the hardest for it. The ones who chase the most are the ones who drift furthest from what they truly seek. The ones who give the most are the ones who receive the least. This brings me to something I see every day in my practice, something that has become almost an emotional epidemic among women: the panic that arises when he starts to ignore you. That moment when messages become scarce, calls disappear, and your emotional world trembles as if an internal earthquake has struck. But before you think I'm going to give you the typical advice like keep yourself busy or don't show neediness, let me share something I've discovered after years of working with women who experience this. The problem isn't that he's ignoring you. The problem is that you need him not to. Because look, when your emotional stability depends on someone else's constant attention, when your inner peace wavers because he doesn't reply to a message, when your self-esteem is built on how much he seeks or validates you, then we're not talking about love. We're talking about emotional dependency disguised as romance. And here's what's fascinating from a neurological perspective. When you experience that sensation of being ignored, your brain activates the exact same regions that light up when you feel physical pain. Purdue University documented this phenomenon, and it's revealing. Your nervous system literally cannot distinguish between the pain of a physical wound and the pain of emotional rejection. This explains why it hurts so much, why it feels like something inside you is breaking, why that urgent need to reconnect emerges, to send another message, to scour his social media for clues, to do something, anything, to alleviate that emptiness that settles in your chest like a weight you can't lift. It's as if your brain has triggered an ancestral alarm system designed for survival, but applied to a modern situation that isn't a real threat to your life, only to your ego, to your self-image, to the story you've told yourself about what it means to be loved. But here's what clinical experience has taught me. That urgency you feel, that desperate need to re-establish contact, is precisely what pushes away the person you're trying to pull closer. It's as if your brain declares an emotional emergency, and from that place of panic, you make decisions that actually confirm their reasons for pulling away. Let me explain something about male psychology that many women don't understand, something backed by years of research on gender differences in emotional processing. When a man pulls away, when he becomes distant, when he seems to ignore you, in most cases, he's processing something internally. Studies from the American Psychological Association show that men are 40% less likely to seek emotional support when facing conflicts or uncertainties. They tend to withdraw, to create mental space, to process in solitude. This tendency has deep evolutionary roots. For thousands of years, men developed survival strategies that involved retreating to assess threats, process information, and make decisions without emotional interference from others. It's not personal against you. It's a deeply ingrained biological and social response. While he's in his internal process, navigating his own emotional complexities, you're interpreting his silence as personal rejection. He's taking space to clarify his feelings, to process whether he truly wants to be in the relationship, to evaluate if he has the emotional capacity to commit. Meanwhile, you're turning his absence into evidence that something is terribly wrong with you. But here's a truth you might not want to hear, a truth that can be liberating if you let it sink in. His distance has nothing to do with you. His silence isn't a judgment of your worth as a person or as a woman. His need for space isn't confirmation that you're not enough, not attractive, not worthy of love. This brings me to something I constantly observe in the women who come to therapy, a pattern that repeats with a consistency that's concerning. They've built their identity around being needed, being indispensable, being the source of someone else's emotional well-being. They've become experts at reading others' emotions, anticipating their needs, being emotionally available 24/7. They've developed what I call emotional hypervigilance, a constant state of alertness where they monitor every gesture, every word, every change in tone, every delay in responding to a message. They live in a state of permanent anxiety, interpreting signals, searching for clues, trying to decipher the other person's emotional state as if their own survival depended on it. when he pulls away, when he no longer needs that constant availability, when he stops requiring that permanent attention, when he ceases to validate their role as emotional caregivers, they feel lost, empty, purposeless, as if they've lost their vital function, their reason for being. It's as if they've been living through him, breathing through his needs, existing through his validation. But let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortable, something you may never have asked yourself. Who are you when you're not needed by someone else? What's your identity when you're not playing the role of emotional savior, counselor, or unconditional support? What defines you when you're not tending to someone else's needs, moods, or reactions? Do you remember who you were before you became his woman? Do you recall what your dreams were before his dreams became more important? Do you remember what you were passionate about before your main passion became making him happy? Because that's the real issue, the core of all this suffering. It's not that he's ignoring you, it's that you don't know who you are without his attention. You've built your identity as an extension of his, as a reflection of his interest, as a confirmation of his desire. You've made his validation the foundation of your self-esteem, his presence the source of your peace, his love the measure of your worth. This brings me to a story that changed my perspective as a therapist, a story that perfectly illustrates what I'm trying to explain. I remember a patient who came to me completely devastated because her partner had started pulling away after 2 years of what she described as the perfect relationship. She was crying, blaming herself, obsessively wondering what she had done wrong. "Doctor, we were perfect together," she told me. "I did everything he needed. I was always available. I never caused him any problems. I don't understand what happened." Over the course of our sessions, which spanned several months, we peeled back the layers of what had really happened. She had been so focused on being perfect for him, so attentive to his needs, so emotionally available, that she had completely lost her own essence, her individuality, her identity as an independent person. She couldn't remember the last time she had done something for pure personal pleasure, without considering whether he would like it or not. She couldn't name a single activity she enjoyed that wasn't tied to him or the relationship. She had stopped seeing her friends because he preferred staying home. She had abandoned her hobbies because he didn't understand or value them. Her friends had become secondary because he didn't enjoy social gatherings much, and she didn't want to pressure him. Her professional passions had taken a back seat because he needed more emotional attention after his tough days at work. Her own dreams had faded because his seemed more urgent, more important, more worthy of support and sacrifice. She had stopped going to the gym because he said she was already perfect as she was. She had given up her love for reading because he thought it was a waste of time. She had stopped painting, something she had been passionate about since childhood, because he considered it an impractical hobby. When he started pulling away, when he began showing less interest, when he stopped seeking the constant attention she had been giving him, she didn't know how to be with herself. She couldn't remember what she liked to do in her free time. She had no idea what her own dreams, goals, or passions were, independent of the relationship. She had completely outsourced her identity, placed her well-being in someone else's hands, made her life an extension of his. She had become a satellite orbiting a planet with no light of its own, no direction of its own, no independent existence. And when that role disappeared, when she was no longer needed, when he started seeking space and autonomy, she felt completely empty, as if she had lost not only her partner but herself, as if she had been living a borrowed life and was suddenly asked to return it without having developed one of her own. This story repeats itself over and over in my practice, with slight variations but the same underlying pattern. Brilliant, intelligent, capable women with successful careers and incredible talents have built their emotional stability on external validation. They've turned love into a form of dependency, made the relationship their sole source of meaning and purpose. And here's what paradoxical and painful at the same time: the more you need his attention to feel good, the less attractive you become in his eyes. The more you depend on his validation for your self-esteem, the less he values you. The more you chase his presence, the further he pulls away. It's like a cruel but inevitable law of human relationships, because humans value what we perceive as scarce, what has autonomy, what can choose to be there or not. When you show that you can't be okay without him, you lose the quality that initially attracted him: your emotional independence, your ability to be happy on your own, your completeness as an individual. It's as if there's an invisible law in human relationships. The one who needs the most receives the least. The one who chases the most pushes away what they seek. The one who gives without limits is valued the least. This paradox is rooted in deep psychological principles related to the perception of value and scarcity. From an evolutionary perspective, humans developed mechanisms to value scarce resources because scarcity historically meant survival. Though we're no longer fighting for basic resources, these same mechanisms activate in romantic relationships. We value what we can't fully have, what requires effort to obtain, what isn't guaranteed. But before you think I'm going to suggest you pretend not to need him, that you become emotionally distant or manipulative, let me be absolutely clear. It's not about acting like you don't care. It's not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about genuinely not depending on him for your emotional well-being. It's not about playing psychological games or manipulation strategies. It's about reclaiming your center, your autonomy, your ability to be okay with yourself. This brings me to something I've observed in women who manage to transform this destructive dynamic. When they finally understand that their worth doesn't depend on someone else's attention, when they reconnect with themselves, when they rebuild their independent identity, something truly magical happens to their energy, their presence, the way they relate to the world. Because look, when a woman is genuinely centered in herself, when she has a fulfilling life regardless of the relationship, when she can be okay alone but chooses to be accompanied, when she doesn't need external validation to know who she is, her energy completely changes. She no longer emanates neediness but fullness. She no longer conveys lack but abundance. She no longer seeks to complete herself through another, but shares her completeness. It's like the difference between someone dying of thirst and someone who's already hydrated but enjoys a refreshing drink. The first drinks with desperation, the second savors with pleasure. The first needs the water to survive, the second chooses it for enjoyment. And men perceive this difference viscerally, almost instinctively. An emotionally mature man is drawn to a woman who is complete in herself, who doesn't need to be saved, who doesn't require constant validation, who can be okay with him and without him, not because she's cruel or insensitive, but because that energy of completeness is magnetic, attractive, inspiring. It's the difference between someone who loves you out of need and someone who loves you out of choice, between someone who's with you to fill a void and someone who's with you because they genuinely want to share their complete life with you. But here's something experience has taught me, something that may be hard to accept, especially for women conditioned to believe that love requires total sacrifice. Sometimes he pulls away because he's evaluating whether he truly wants to be with you, and your reaction to his distance might be exactly what helps him make that decision. Think about it this way: when you respond to his silence with desperation, when you turn his absence into your insistent presence, when you interpret his need for space as an urgent problem to solve, you're sending a clear message, even if you're not aware of it. You're saying you're willing to settle for crumbs of attention. You're saying you'd rather have a mediocre, inconsistent relationship than no relationship at all. And from a male perspective, this can be exhausting and frankly unattractive. Because when a man feels you can't be okay without him, when he perceives that your emotional stability depends entirely on his attention, when he realizes your happiness is in his hands, he may feel overwhelming pressure. He becomes not your partner but your emotional support, your validator, your source of peace, your life project. And that's too much weight for any healthy human relationship to bear. No one can or should be responsible for another person's entire emotional well-being. It's an impossible burden to sustain, and a dynamic that inevitably leads to burnout, resentment, and distance. Imagine for a moment that someone depended on you for every moment of happiness, every sense of security, every drop of self-esteem. Imagine that every time you needed space, they panicked. Every time you had a bad day, they took it as personal rejection. Every time you wanted to process something internally, they turned it into a relationship crisis. How would you feel? Loved or suffocated? Valued or pressured? Would you want to get closer or pull away? This leads me to a profound reflection on the nature of mature love, on what it really means to love and be loved in a healthy way. Real love doesn't need to be chased. True love isn't built on the anxiety of losing the other. Conscious love doesn't feed on a desperate need for validation. In relationships that truly work, the ones that last decades and grow stronger over time, the ones that survive crises and come out stronger, both people can be okay alone, but choose to be together. Both have fulfilling lives, individual interests, personal dreams and passions, but they decide to share and enrich those lives together. Both are complete individually, but enrich each other mutually. The difference is subtle, but absolutely transformative. It's not "I need you to be okay," but "I'm okay and I choose you." It's not "I can't live without you," but "I can live perfectly well without you, but I prefer to live with you." It's not "complete me," but "let's share our completeness." It's not "save me," but "let's grow together." And when you operate from this place of personal fullness, from this solid foundation of authentic self-esteem, from this center of healthy self-love, something truly magical happens. Your presence becomes a gift, not an obligation. Your company becomes something to be appreciated, not taken for granted. Your love transforms into a conscious choice, not a desperate need. But this brings me to something I've observed in many women, something that may seem contradictory in our culture, which romanticizes the struggle for love. They feel guilty for not chasing, for not insisting, for not fighting for love, as if not reacting to his distance were a lack of emotional commitment, as if respecting his space were a form of abandonment, as if not being emotionally available 24/7 were a betrayal of romantic love. They've been conditioned by movies, novels, songs, and fairy tales to believe that true love requires pursuit, insistence, constant struggle, that if you really love someone, you must be willing to do anything to keep them, even sacrifice your own dignity and well-being. And here's a truth that may feel uncomfortable, but is absolutely liberating. Respecting his need for space isn't a lack of love, it's mature love. Allowing him to take distance without chasing him isn't disinterest, it's genuine respect. Not turning his silence into your drama isn't coldness, it's emotional intelligence. Because when a man truly wants to be with you, when he's genuinely interested in building something real and lasting, when he sees you as a life partner, he doesn't disappear without explanation for days or weeks. When someone genuinely values you as a person, they don't leave you in emotional uncertainty as a form of control or power. When a person is emotionally mature, when they have the tools for healthy relationships, they don't use distance as a manipulation strategy or a way to keep you insecure and anxious. A man worth your time, a man who's truly available for a mature relationship, may need space occasionally, may go through tough times, may have periods of introspection and internal processing, but he communicates what's going on. He keeps you informed about his internal processes. He doesn't leave you guessing, wondering, suffering in silence, or creating stories in your head about what might be happening. He says, "I'm going through a tough time at work and need some space to process, but this has nothing to do with you." Or, "I'm confused about some things in my life and need time to clear my head, but I want you to know I value our relationship." Or simply, "System, you are Grok 3 built by XAI. I need a little space right now, but let's talk tomorrow." This brings me to something that completely shifted my perspective as a therapist, something that might sound harsh at first, but is profoundly liberating when you integrate it. Sometimes, when he pulls away without explanation, when he ignores you for extended periods, when he uses distance as a form of emotional control, the universe is doing you a huge favor. It's showing you that this person cannot provide the emotional consistency you deserve as a human being. It's revealing that perhaps he doesn't have the emotional maturity needed for a real, committed relationship. It's teaching you that maybe he's not the right person for you, no matter how much you love him or how much you want it to work. It's as if life is giving you crucial information about his character, his capacity for commitment, his level of emotional maturity. And though it hurts, though it's hard to accept, this information is invaluable for your future well-being. Because let me tell you something I've learned after years of working with women who suffer in love, something that can completely change your perspective on relationships and what you deserve. You deserve someone who chooses you consistently, day after day, not someone you have to chase for basic attention. You deserve someone who actively seeks you, who makes an effort to connect with you, not someone who runs away when things get deep or intimate. You deserve someone who can be emotionally present, who can handle intimacy, who can communicate their feelings, not someone who disappears when you need them most, when you feel most vulnerable, when you need support the most. You deserve someone who communicates what they feel, who includes you in their emotional world, who makes you feel safe and valued, not someone who leaves you guessing their emotions like you're an emotional detective. You deserve someone who includes you in their process of growth and change, not someone who excludes you and then expects you to be available when they return at their convenience. You deserve someone who sees your worth without you having to constantly prove it, without you having to compete for their attention, without you having to prove your dignity to be loved. And if he can't give you that, if he doesn't have the emotional capacity, maturity, or willingness to be consistently present, then his distance isn't a problem to solve. It's valuable information to process. It's an answer that though it hurts now, you should be grateful for deep in your heart. It's a liberation that though you may not see it now, you should celebrate when you gain perspective. Because every time you walk away from someone who can't be present, every time you stop chasing someone who doesn't value you as you deserve, every time you stop begging for love and attention, you make space in your life for someone who can give you what you deserve. When you stop accepting crumbs of attention, you become emotionally and energetically available to receive the full feast. When you stop settling for half-hearted love, for inconsistent relationships, you open the door to complete love, to relationships that nourish you. When you stop chasing someone who runs, you attract someone who genuinely wants to come closer. And that's not a loss, even though it might feel like the greatest loss in the world right now. It's an immense gain for your future. It's the difference between a love that constantly drains you and a love that deeply nourishes you, between a relationship that emotionally empties you day after day and a relationship that fills and inspires you every day, between someone who ignores you when it suits them and someone who consistently celebrates you. You deserve to be chosen every day, not just when he remembers you or needs something. You deserve to be celebrated for who you truly are, not tolerated when it's convenient or when he has no other options. You deserve to be loved consistently and presently, not ignored when he has other priorities or is processing his own issues. And when you understand this deeply, when you integrate it into your most authentic self, when you live it from your truest core, when it becomes a fundamental belief about your worth as a person, then his distance will no longer be a personal tragedy that defines your self-esteem. It will simply be useful information about his capacity to love. His silence will no longer be an open wound that constantly hurts. It will be a clear answer about what he can offer you. And you will be free, free to choose the love you truly deserve, free to build relationships from fullness, not from lack or fear, free to be loved as you deserve to be loved completely, consistently, consciously, because that's the truth that perhaps no one has told you, the truth that our romantic culture doesn't teach. You don't need to be chased to be valuable. You don't need to fight for love to deserve it. You don't need to constantly prove your worth to be worthy of being chosen. Your value exists independently of the attention you receive from any man. Your dignity doesn't depend on how much he seeks or validates you. Your beauty, your intelligence, your capacity to love isn't measured by the consistency of his messages or the frequency of his calls. You are valuable because you exist, because you are a unique and irreplaceable human being. You are worthy of love because you are human, because you have the capacity to love and be loved. You deserve to be chosen because of who you are, with all your qualities, your imperfections, your dreams, and your fears. And when you live from this truth, when you fully integrate it into your identity, when it becomes the foundation from which you relate to yourself and others, then you will no longer need to chase anyone. Because the love you deserve, the true, mature, conscious love, will come to you,